everyone. This is episode 42 of AP Marvel, and you know what that means. 42 is...
Life, the universe, and everything?
Yeah, also, 42, is that someone's, sports jersey number? I feel like that's a significant number for someone.
It is.
Jackie
I
Robinson.
feel like everybody's number is some number.
Yeah. No, someone important, though. But yeah, you're listening to the voices of, I'm Chris Compendio.
I'm Anthony Paone.
Your usual host. Yep, Anthony Paone is here, introducing himself, apparently. I'm here with returning guest, Hannah Frank. Hi, Hannah.
Hello! So excited to be back.
Yes, we are very happy to have you back. And you brought a +1 with you. Is that correct?
I did! I brought along my co-host this time, David.
Oh.
I'm nobody's +1. I'm the main attraction. My name's David Frank. I'm here to really douche up the place.
Douche up the place?
Famous Frank family.
Cousin duo.
Yeah,
Yeah, guys.
I believe I called you a media empire last time.
Yes,
yeah.
You did.
Right. Well, if you're listening to AP Marvel for the first time, we did a little crossover about crossovers on your show. It
may or may not have aired already. We'll see.
Yeah, no, there were no technical issues that happened.
None at all.
None at all.
No.
None.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about more crossovers, but we're going to hone in on the MCU. We kind of talked about literally everything but in talking tropes.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about what did we even mention? We talked about
Rugrats, Wild Thornberries,
yeah.
Ninja Turtles, and the Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana.
Yeah, all the
important ones.
Yep.
Yeah. All the essentials.
Glass, we did
Fight
not
the
talk
Box.
For some reason.
We've talked enough about Glass on this show, but anyway, I was really interested in talking about the MCU, not only because of our Marvel podcast, but because that cliche phrase that just became a meme, Avengers Infinity War is the most ambitious crossover event
Of all time.
I don't know if they're of all time.
Yeah.
I was gonna say of history, but I actually don't remember what they said.
It was a great meme of 2018. There was a lot of quality memes that came out of it. I'd say it actually would probably be one of the top
tier,
top 10 of 2018. There was a few others in that list, but this is not a meme podcast. This is that's an idea. That's
Marvel podcast.
It's a Marvel podcast, but that's a good idea for a podcast.
Yeah, no. If you're a patron for Patreon, then tune in to Anthony. What's the meme? What's it called? What's the podcast called?
It's called AP Marvel.
AP memes. There we go.
AP memes.
Ooh,
there you go.
That's a good. Ooh, you got me going.
We'll workshop that. But anyway,
I'd listen.
So we're all very used to the Marvel Cinematic Universe characters jumping around different movies, and I'm wondering, because people have kind of compared the MCU films to a long-running television show, is it even like a series of series now, or is it just one giant series, I guess is the question we're asking here. And I wanted to basically ask y'all how you've kind of approached watching the MCU. So, I guess if we're talking like the Phase 1 set of films, we got Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Thor, Captain America: The First Avenger, all culminating in Joss Whedon's The Avengers.
Yes.
How many of you guys skipped one? Before seeing the first Avengers the first time?
Did I skip any, are you saying?
Skipped at least one.
I didn't. I saw all of them, actually.
You saw all of them? I skipped Thor. I didn't see Thor before I saw the first Avengers.
Had I seen like any of them? I saw Iron Man 2.
You didn't see Iron Man 1.
I think I saw Thor.
Yeah, I saw them all by accident. My parents bought the Incredible Hulk on DVD.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. It was.
Did they think it was a different Incredible Hulk?
No, I don't know. They just bought it on DVD, or maybe I was just like, "Hey, can we get this?" Or I don't know, but it happened.
You had it.
I have it.
Yeah, I think I saw Iron Man 2, Hulk, and then I skipped Thor and Captain America, and then I saw the Avengers, and I was like, I'll probably go check out those other movies. And I think that is kind of like TV, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
You were saying about how it's like a TV show. You don't think about it, but a lot of people, their first episode that they see is like a season premiere or a season finale, and then they,
get hooked.
watch the rest on syndication.
Yeah, and then they might wind back after that, but I kind of approached them just as standalone movies at first because I don't remember if I saw the post-credit scene of Iron Man 1, actually. I might have read about it after that, or maybe I read about it before and stayed as a result of reading that.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't really register to me as, oh, this is all culminating in the Avengers, because, I was not an Avengers guy back then. I was a Justice League dude.
Mm-hmm.
Traitor.
Well, you remember the Incredible Hulk had a pre-credit sequence, right?
Yeah,
so you
Tony
saw
Stark showed
that
up.
if you saw that movie.
Yeah.
So everybody knew, like, oh man, that's Robert Downey Jr. I know him.
Right, yeah.
He's an
I
actor.
thought that was a cool thing, but it still felt like its own movie that just happened to, like, I wasn't used to shared universes, because that wasn't really a thing.
None of us
in
were.
movies, like heavy. So I don't know. It just always got like a reminder at the end, like, Nick Fury shows up
Right.
at the end of most of these first movies. So that's just kind of how I made the connection. But it was weird to me when they first unveiled the Avengers cast. I think this was Comic-Con. I don't think it was 2011. I think it was 2010, maybe, because I don't even think Thor 1 and Cap 1 were out yet. So,
because that was like the big thing, was like, everybody knew, okay, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, that just makes sense. It was a popular movie. Put in Incredible Hulk, that he's a popular character. And then, nobody was expecting them to do a Captain America movie, because the last one from the 70s was bad.
Hot garbage.
Bad movie.
Wasn't there a 90s, like, really bad movie, too?
That was like a TV movie, I think.
Yeah, no, I saw clips of them via Conan O'Brien and also later the Nostalgia Critic, but
We don't talk about that.
Fun times.
Yeah. You said the forbidden words.
You said
yeah.
Change the channel. But like, yeah, it was a weird idea to do like Captain America and Thor as their own movies. Like a Thor movie, it just on its own doesn't make any sense.
No.
Like, why would you make that movie?
It makes a lot of sense if you read the comics and have an understanding of how much depth there is to the universe of Thor.
But imagine that you're like in a studio, Anthony, and you're coming in and you're like, I'm gonna pitch you a movie, all right?
Yeah.
It's all right. It's like City of Angels with Nicolas Cage, but instead of Nicolas Cage as an angel, it's the God of Thunder, Thor. And also half of it is like an action movie with like really expensive set pieces, but most of it is City of Angels.
The movie Spawn existed before this.
Yeah, but Spawn, it makes sense because you're marketing it to like a gore audience. Like, who is Thor marketed to?
Are you?
Spawn? Yeah, Spawn is marketed to like the people who listen to death metal. Like, there's always an audience there.
That was like what, like late '90s era. So it was of that attitude.
The perfect time.
Right?
The Attitude Era.
Yeah, it was the perfect time.
The perfect time for Spawn.
Yeah, and it didn't do that well, but like
recently.
like it became a cult hit, which was what they were aiming for.
It's not good.
I mean, that's like the whole point. Is just I don't like Thor. If you weren't planning a cinematic universe, no one would ever make a Thor movie. It just would never happen.
I question that sometimes. There were plans to make, like, other studios, when they had the rights, they wanted to make a Thor movie that just never came to fruition, and I wonder if it's because...
Right, but, like, why do you think it never came to fruition? It died in the pitch meeting every single time. Somebody was like, so he's got, like, long blonde hair?
I don't know.
Is he, like, for the ladies? And they'd be like, no, see, like, most of the movie is him hitting bad guys with a hammer and causing them to bleed.
There are so many atrocious movies out there by, like, actual, like film studios, like... So many atrocious films that I don't even know how they made it past, like, the first, like screening, Thor would definitely have made it past it.
Like there are bad movies and there are good movies, but there are good pitches and there are bad pitches. And a bad pitch is, I'm going to make a Thor movie.
I disagree. I completely disagree.
We'll never know. We were never in the room.
Yeah, sorry, we're getting off on a tangent.
I think that argument is kind of go in circles. No offense,
yeah.
but
no, it will continue to go in circles.
Cut the whole thing.
That's a genuine concern, and now I'm left questioning if it was just a standalone, not tied to a universe, could Thor even happen as a movie? I think it could happen as a movie. It just might not be a good movie. But
like, there's this concept in film development called tent poles, and I mean it's pretty well known, but like I don't know if all of your audience knows what a tent pole is, but it's just you have a big movie and it holds up and supports the other movies like a pole in a tent.
Wow.
Now, see here.
I'm so glad you educated our audience on what tentpole means now.
Maybe they don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm joshing, but
Joshing?
I was
You're
so
joshing like Whedon.
I'm joshing you.
Just straight joshing us.
So it's Comic-Con 2010, I think, but they all go up on stage. It's Joss Whedon and all the cast. And you're celebrating like, oh, they're finally gonna do like this big crossover, and you're like, wait, I haven't seen the other movies that are crossing over with Iron Man yet. So it's the question is the Avengers really a crossover, or is it just an endpoint for all of these kind of like side projects that will all justify the existence of like the real project of the Avengers? So in that era of phase 1 of the MCU, how did you kind of approach watching the movies? Like, were you like me and kind of detaching it from the larger universe until like the cameo happens, or were you like invested in like because the Avengers was not as big a name as Justice League back then? So was it something that you were personally invested in? Hannah, any memories of like that era?
Yeah, so like I went into seeing the Avengers only having seen Iron Man 2, like half watching it at like a random friend of my parents' house. Never like hadn't seen the first one, had never seen any Hulk movie. I think I saw Thor, or like the end of Thor or something, and I was like, this movie's bad. And like that was sort of my like interaction with the MCU. But then I got very excited about the Avengers for some reason.
Like why?
I mean, I will say this. At the time, I was a big Joss Whedon fan. And I was like, okay, cool. A person who I like is
before
writing...
you were disillusioned.
Yeah. Honestly.
Before you became jaded.
Yeah. Truly the social justice warriors got to me. But yeah, like I was really pumped for the Avengers. I was excited to see... I remember enjoying Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man 2 despite not particularly loving the film, and I was also a big Hawkeye fan from Thor. I was like, you're enjoyable. I like this part. So I was like excited for a chance to see these characters come together, and yeah, like I don't know, I loved the first Avengers movie. I haven't been back to revisit it, I think, since it came out, probably.
Right, yeah.
But like I loved it. I remember sitting in the theater with like one of my best friends and just like us like whispering and being like, oh my god, did you see that? This is so funny, this is amazing. Like we were so into it.
Yeah, it's such a curious phenomenon to me because opening night, people are going to applaud during that the 360 shot of the 6 heroes finally together, and I'm excited because it's a cool moment, but to me it's like, are they excited because they loved all of these individual movies and they're happy to see them all crossing over? Or is it because they're invested in the team the comics, because they know that like maybe they're not in love with these versions of the characters, but maybe they have like nostalgia from the older comics, or I don't know, was that just that good of a shot?
I mean, at the time, you have to remember like the last like big, temple blockbuster movie that was really being pitched as like an event movie was Avatar. And then this was like another movie that sort of was presenting something as this is new, this is something you've never seen before. You've never seen this many superheroes in one place at once.
Yeah.
And that kind of stands on its own, whether you saw Iron Man or not.
Yeah, well, and I think, like, crossovers have a couple of purposes. One can be the excitement of seeing all your favorites come together, but it's also about a greater awareness of, like, the other characters, too. And, like, if you liked this, maybe you'll want to go check out the other ones, which is exactly what the Avengers did for me. Like, I wasn't excited for the Avengers because of the individual movies that had come before it, but I was really excited to go back and watch them after falling in love with these characters in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think an interesting point is kind of like remember, X-Men existed before Iron Man 1. Hold on 1 second while I look this up just so I can figure out the exact time when this is happening. Give me a second.
Didn't do your due diligence before this?
No,
huh?
I did not. Okay, so X-Men The Last Stand came out in 2006. And X-Men
Could have just asked me that. I could have told you that.
I'm a dingus. And it had a bunch of superheroes that, you've seen in all the comics. But, like, there's 50 different superheroes, like, unique superheroes in that movie. What makes Avengers different than that is not just, like, a bunch of superheroes are in one place. It's that there's a bunch of characters that you don't have to go into intense detail to understand their backstory. And if you go into it knowing all these characters' backstory and having a feeling or an emotional attachment, whether good or bad, to these characters, then you can see them all together interacting with each other in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all have very distinct looks. They all come from very different worlds. Like, you can just look at the character designs. Like, that's the mythological guy. That's the soldier guy. That's the robot man. That guy has a bow and arrow, and also that's the Hulk. I know who the Hulk is.
Are we overlooking just how like dreamy the actors are
They're
as
very
compared
dreamy.
to The Last Stand?
I don't know. A lot of people
you got Hugh Jackman in The Last Stand, but other than that, I mean, I'm really showing up to Avengers for the Hunk Fest.
Yeah,
Ellen Page isn't a hunk.
We're saying attractive people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so interesting hearing the different, like, because it doesn't seem like people were didn't like Thor 1, but when Thor...
No, people didn't like Thor 1.
Well, here's the thing. When Thor landed on the Quinjet to retrieve Loki, when he entered the movie late compared to everyone else, he made his grand, thunderous entrance, literally. And people at my screening applauded. It's like, yeah, Thor's here! And it's like, wait, did you guys actually like that Thor movie? Or was that just a really cool moment? Because no one applauded at Cap, when he was, like, punching the thing in his first scene.
Mm-hmm.
People had seen that scene already. It was in the post-credits.
That's true, yeah. People did applaud when Tony Stark saved Cap from getting beat up by Loki, and
like, no one cheered for Banner, but when Hulk showed up, everybody went crazy.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's my secret, Cap, is, like, that's an iconic scene.
It's now become one of the greatest memes of all time.
That's a genuinely good line from the MCU. I want to rewind back with Hannah to Iron Man 2, because it sounds like to me you were kind of distracted, but like you weren't really like focused on the movie while you were watching it. But I'm wondering if you remember, or if you've revisited since, if there are any part of Iron Man 2, because that's kind of seen as the that's kind of the breaking point where you see a lot of reviews and general opinions that are like, oh, this is getting into major, this is just an Avengers setup movie territory, So I'm wondering if you caught any of that back then, or looking back, if you can kind of see that.
Yeah, I feel like I sort of saw it in this vacuum. Like, I didn't see it as, like, yes, a superhero movie as part of the MCU. Like, and, like, most of the films weren't even really talked about in that way. Like, even as far as Iron Man 2 was. Like, I just thought it was like, oh, a superhero film? Like, I like those. What is this one? And just sort of stumbled into it. And I was like, oh, this guy's kind of snarky. I can dig it.
Nick Fury shows up at the donut shop, and you're like, what? How do you react? Because they don't send him up.
Well, Chris, I mean, I don't want to like interrupt.
No, go for it.
Hannah's story. But like when you're first watching like Iron Man 2, I don't think I was definitely not thinking about a cinematic universe. I was thinking about sequels. And what sequels always do is they expand the world. So I was thinking about this more like Shrek 2 or, Back to the Future Part
Nothing
2.
Beats
Shrek 2. Like it expands.
Nothing beats Shrek 2.
It expands the world and like introduces okay, there's an organization that deals with these things, and I wasn't thinking about like Black Widow. I guess that's a character that's going to come back. Yeah. I mean, I thought she was a one-off. Honestly,
in this movie.
Right. Well, and I think also because I hadn't seen the first one, anything I didn't understand, I kind of was like, oh, they must have talked about it in the first one.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I feel like good sequels, and even some of the MCU sequels did a pretty good job of catching people up to speed. I think my problem with the Nick Fury thing was that it felt very in media res, where they just start talking about the Avengers Initiative like out of nowhere, and people were not savvy. Like not everyone was as savvy.
I think that's like the best thing about it is it doesn't like pretend that the characters have less information just so that they can exposit. It just sort of lets us infer what they mean by that.
Sure. Okay.
And
that's fair.
It's kind of like done in sort of a subtle way. I mean, the rest of the movie is far from subtle, but this is the one thing, the kind of hinting of the Avengers. I thought that was done pretty well.
It's a strange movie to me because if you were to say to watch all three Iron Man movies together, 1 and 2 feel pretty standalone, and then 1 and 3 feel pretty standalone, and then I remember way back when, in like when the movie came out in 2010, I had a friend who called it the awkward middle child, and I kind of agree with that even still.
I think of Iron Man 3 as like the gross mutant that's like split off from the other two. I mean, I like Iron Man 3, but it's just like it's so weird and different from the first two.
Yeah.
Whereas the first two are more or less the same movie, but with like added sprinkles.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that you say that the third one feels so standalone, because like I agree, like it doesn't really, like the meat of the plot doesn't really refer to the rest of the MCU, but like the whole trauma of it is like because of the MCU.
I think you misunderstood me. I'm not saying that it's standalone. I'm saying it's
Chris.
Really different from Iron Man 1 and 2. No, he was saying Iron Man 2 was standalone.
Oh, I misspoke. I meant
okay.
Iron Man 2, Return of the Iron.
Yeah.
Oh,
but not the man, just the iron part. When did you guys start using the term MCU in your life? Because I don't remember.
Probably after Avengers, I think. Because at that point it was pretty clear that like they were gonna make more of this.
You might as well ask me when I started using yeet. I mean, it's like
lost to time.
Terms are nebulous. You don't know when you learn them.
Yeah, it's like I don't remember when that became like part of the, because that's not something you see in trailers or promotional material. That's just, I guess that's just word of mouth.
Yeah.
Or maybe like because not everyone watches interviews with Kevin Feige. It's just like how did, I don't understand like where.
Well, it's like a movie series that doesn't have like a title. Like if you're saying I'm gonna go see the new Harry Potter.
Right.
But if you're saying I'm going to see the new Marvel movie.
People say Marvel movies or like the new Marvel movie, but I guess I still don't hear like my parents do not say MCU.
Really?
No.
They say MCU.
Yeah. No, they just say like, oh, the new Marvel thing. And there are people who are actually like pretty invested in like they watch all the movies and they try to catch up when they forget what happened because they want to watch Infinity War. Yeah, no one says J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World.
No, literally 0 people.
Yeah, they say the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Only if they're talking about the theme park.
No, they'll just say, hey, you see that new piece of shit? But anyway. Dis! Post Phase 1 of the MCU.
Yeah.
See, post Phase 1, like, all the movies started, like, referencing the Avengers.
Right.
Like, basically saying, like, hey, go back and watch. If you missed something, go back and watch. We're not going to catch you up all the way. Sort of like accepting that you need to see more than one movie to understand the context of the movie that you're watching.
Yeah, like Iron Man 3, Thor 2, Cap 2, they all verbally referenced New York. They just called, after New York,
right.
Or like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's fun to kind of imagine that there's like a Thor fan, the biggest Thor fan. Maybe this is you, Anthony. And you just watch Thor and then Thor 2 and then Thor 3 with no other movies mixed in because you just love Thor.
Oh, no,
and you just be so
I
confused.
don't like Thor at all. I was just arguing that point.
Also, I think he was joking.
I don't think that necessarily all of the movies were just like, hey, go back, watch Avengers. I think that's not giving enough credit to what like the Winter Soldier is. Like maybe Iron Man 3, yeah.
I'm not taking any credit away from anybody. I'm just saying, like, if you're watching Winter Soldier, you're confused if you didn't see either Avengers or Cap.
But that makes sense.
There's a
that
lot
makes
of
sense
just.
If you didn't see Cap 1, you'd be confused if you didn't see Shrek 1 if you watched Shrek 2.
Yes, but I think there's a slight difference. It's not a direct sequel. It's a sequel with a big crossover in the middle. And I think that changes the way that you communicate with the text.
I think if you watched Cap 1, Cap 2, and Cap 3, you would still get the point of the whole thing.
You would have some questions like, who is that character? But like, they're like, I think with the Cap movies,
I would have a lot of questions.
There's a very good.
I would have a lot of questions about the world.
I feel like all three of those movies have a very good, have very distinct constants that I don't think the Thor and Iron Man trilogies really have. Because Thor was just like, hey, these are 3 different interpretations of what to do with Thor, and only one of them is the best. But,
only one of them worked.
Yeah, Cap, like, it helps
I love all the Thor movies.
Yeah, sure. It helps that the Cap trilogy were all written by the same pair of screenwriters, so there's an actual consistency to them. And
is that the case? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, Marcus McFeely, and I feel like Steve, Peggy, and Bucky are like the 3 constants that kind of make you remember. Oh yeah, Winter Soldier actually I felt was a really good sequel to the first Avenger because, especially when you bring in the the actual suit that he wears at the end of that movie, that was kind of a cool moment to me. But it was kind of weird uncharted territory phase 2 because it's like, okay, we get the crossover. Now what do we do? Because we're gonna split them off again, and then put them back together at the end.
I feel like right up before Ultron was when I remember a lot of critics saying things like, "Hey, why don't you just call Tony?" Or like, "Hey, why don't you just do this?" And it was like this questioning of the nature of a shared universe. Like, why do people ever even have their own stories?
Yeah. That's an easier criticism for, I think, the Netflix Marvel side of things because they're all in the same city. I give the movies a little bit more leeway, but
like half of them are in the same neighborhood too, which really kills me.
Hell's Kitchen.
It's like a 10-minute walk.
My city.
My city.
When I was a boy, okay, no Kingpin impressions here. Anyway, but when you get to like post Age of Ultron, you have a lot more cross-pollination after that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We can debate on like what happened behind the scenes with Edgar Wright and Ant-Man, but there was a lot more MCU and Ant-Man. Howard Stark was there, Peggy Carter was there. The Falcon had a scene in Ant-Man because yes.
Gotta do that cross promotion. Gotta do that temple.
Right. But at the same time, like, that happens in the comics all the time. You would read a you can like read a Fantastic Four comic, for example, and maybe like Spider-Man shows up really briefly. You know, that's obviously easier.
But is that also to like promote like the side issues or whatever they're called?
Sometimes
like the tie-ins.
Tie-ins, I mean.
Yeah, I mean with the Falcon thing, I mean if it was like, I think it does a little bit more of like, look, this movie is in the movie with all the other movies, because there are dumb people out there who don't understand how these movies work and think that like Into the Spider-Verse is owned by Disney or something.
All right, I know you have a personal beef with some Twitter people.
I'm just saying, like, even when like Ant-Man came out, I mean, like Marvel was still big, but it wasn't like super duper like.
Well, I think people. I feel like Ant-Man's an interesting case because I feel like that was the first character where everyone was like, wait, who? What?
Guardians, though?
Guardians came out
That's
before.
true.
Yeah.
Guardians came out before Ants, but I feel like people were able to, like, at least with the Guardians, it was like, oh, it's a space adventure. Sure, I've seen those. Like, and it was a team in and of itself,
I think if we're going to talk about Guardians before we talk about Ants, or do you want to talk about Ants now? Which do you prefer?
Let's just talk about ants, but not Ant-Man, just
right.
literally the insects. Ants. So ants.
Annoying at picnics.
Yeah, A Bug's Life.
Oh, God.
With Dave
They come,
Foley
they eat,
and
they
Kevin
leave.
Spacey.
They come, they eat, they leave.
Remember the ant bully?
Yeah.
I don't.
The book or
I don't
the
want to
amazing
remember
Paul
the
Rudd
name.
is the
What
ant
about
bully.
Ants with the Z, starring Sylvester Stallone?
Woody
That
Allen
wasn't starring
was,
Sylvester Stallone. He was just in it.
the main character.
It was starring Woody.
Wow, A Bug's Life has Kevin Spacey and Ants has Woody Allen, so like neither of those movies really.
You can't watch
Also,
them
they were
anymore.
bad movies too.
A
in
Bug's
addition.
Life was amazing, and I'll fight
What?
you about that.
Are you serious?
We'll
Bugs Life is
do
awesome.
we'll do it back on our
I
own
like A Bug's
podcast.
Life.
We'll talk about
Yeah.
Bug's Life and why it's the worst Pixar
What?
movie.
Get
ever.
the fuck out!
It's
Have
a
you heard of
socialist,
Cars 2?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's worse than Cars 2.
Wow.
I've seen Cars 2.
Wow, are you
All right,
serious?
all right.
Are you serious with me right now? I am.
David has
I'm so
bad
serious.
taste.
Bad.
Steering us back.
Hey, let's talk
Steering us back.
about Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Let's get off of Ants.
I'm
sorry.
Well, okay. So like Guardians, I think is the first MCU property where people were like, "Who?" But it was like a premise that people could understand pretty easily, and it was like another superhero team, which like we'd had the Avengers, so now we're like, yeah, sure, the superhero team, fine. Ant-Man was the first one where it's like, this is a character sort of on its own, like a title character, and no one knew who like, I still haven't seen Ant-Man,
I'm not, I think you're underplaying like Guardians and like how much that changed the game, because Guardians was like, there's a raccoon and a tree and they talk.
Yeah, why not?
And
Yeah, no, that.
like,
Like I
Like,
honestly,
we've all
if I
seen
walked
Star
into- if I
Wars.
walked
That
into
stuff
a
just
board
hadn't
meeting-
been done
if I
in a
walked
serious
into a board meeting and
context.
said that idea, I think it would be a pretty dumb idea.
All right, that's fair.
And like they're just really like the Guardians are unknown. Ant-Man is actually like way more known, at least within the comic watching community, than Guardians.
Sure, but I'm saying it has a more compelling...
Like Ant-Man was an Avenger, one of the original Avengers.
Sure. But like among the wider public, as someone who doesn't read comics, like I was really confused between Ant-Man and like the Tick, because I had seen like a cartoon of it once as a child. And I was like, they're the same, right? They're not.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Well, but like I'm saying as like
Fun
a
fact.
standard person off the street,
Yeah, fun fact,
Sure.
we bring up the Tick when we're also talking about Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy. One of the characters from Guardians of the Galaxy plays the Tick.
Oh.
That's true. In the new Amazon series,
Yep.
right? Yeah. Patrick Warburton, I believe, was
Oh,
the other
shit.
Tick, but
Damn.
here's the thing. I feel that I mean I remember looking at that first concept art for Guardians before they cast anyone, and I saw the tree and the raccoon. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Even as someone who was invested in the MCU back then.
Mm-hmm.
But for on Ant-Man's side, the trailers had to kind of depend on like the line where Paul Rudd's like, he kind of snarkily says, "I think we should call the Avengers on this one." and
Yeah.
it was the promotional material was making fun of itself. There were a lot of lines
The
like,
promotional material was literally Paul Rudd drumming on his knees and going, ants, 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 ants.
Yeah.
Ants.
But they also used the line where he's like, "Oh yeah, I wish it came up with a better name," but which I don't think was in the final movie. I think that was just in the trailers. But so good arguments for both of them, I think, for being kind of the kind of a black sheep, I guess.
Well, I think like what Guardians did, and everybody like latched onto this immediately, was like, oh, Thanos is here. I see where this is going. Everyone's just kind of suddenly, universally was like, Infinity War is coming. They're going to do a bunch of stuff with the stones. The stones are the thing. The thing is the stones. Am I wrong?
Yes. I think you're totally right. I mean, I feel like Guardians is weird though too, because like this was during Marvel's like dark and gritty phase of like sad superhero movies.
Yeah, you had
and
Iron Man
like
3, Winter Soldier came out literally like 2 months before Guardians came out.
Right. So like it was like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, like Marvel movies had always had snark, but they had never had levity, like real levity.
Yeah, they didn't make a Jackson Pollock joke before that. Which is... I had to say, like, to confirm what they... Yeah. Well, yeah. I feel we should give Guardians a lot of credit for coming first, because... I feel like if Guardians either was not made or if it bombed, I think the MCU lineup would look a lot different today.
Oh,
or
totally.
If not the yeah.
There'd be way less raccoons.
Way fewer.
Yeah,
After Guardians
the
came out,
raccoons
they
all
did the
over
whole
Hollywood
like fucking Apple press conference.
Yeah, where they're like, hey, here's the Phase 3. Kevin Feige goes on a stage and he says, this is the next movie. They show 5 seconds of an animation with a logo and everyone starts cheering, and then that's all the information.
Yo, that was awesome.
I just still find that funny to this day. But the Civil War mislead was great, because they just said the third Captain America movie, and they put on the timeline Captain America Serpent Society, and they didn't say anything about it. And then they show, hey, this is actually Civil War. This is Captain America Civil War. And then they had Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr.
And I think that really showed the real potential. I mean, it wasn't Ultron, because I don't. Do you guys like Ultron?
It's fine.
No.
Like I'll watch it maybe. Like upcoming time.
Like Ultron just felt like we're gonna try and do Avengers again.
But
we're gonna try and do
worse.
what that did.
I like the idea of a movie where the Avengers are like a trained unit. They are an actual team, and like this is just what their life is like. But I did not like the execution of a lot of things.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's like I liked watching the action sequences, but that's about it.
Yeah, it had some good action sequences. The rest was a mess.
I enjoyed some of the moments at the farm, but that's it. I'm weird.
I liked listening to James Spader's voice.
Yeah, that's it.
Listening to James Spader and Paul Bettany talk philosophy and life.
Ugh, it just made me want to like punch everyone I ever talked to in college. You know, like it's just so fake deep TM. I can't stand it.
That's Joss Whedon.
Yeah, I know.
Listen to our Joss Whedon episode, by the way.
I
wanted
have.
to save the world.
Did you
but
agree
you didn't
with,
want
did
it
you
to
agree with our
change.
takes on Jossie boy?
For the most part.
Swag.
But Civil War, David.
But yeah, I mean, compared to Ultron, I think Civil War was really when everybody started to be like, okay, I see the merits of this shared universe. This is what this can do.
I will say this. It was after Age of Ultron that I think I started paying attention to what the upcoming Marvel releases were going to be. Because before that I was kind of like, oh yeah, I guess there's one coming sometime. Like, I'm sure there'll be more.
Yeah, it was very easy to miss Thor 2.
I went and saw Thor 2 in fucking theaters.
And more power to you.
Thor 2 was the only Marvel movie that I did not, other than Captain America 1, was the only movie I did not see in theaters.
Dang.
Yeah, Captain America
Good
1,
call.
my parents put on TV. Like, it was on, like,
Wow.
HBO or something. Not HBO, like,
I saw Thor: The Dark World, not because I was so eager to see the sequel to Kenneth Branagh's Thor movie, but because I felt like, oh, I need to watch this if I want to get what's happening in Age of Ultron.
And you didn't.
I didn't watch it, and it's fine. I didn't watch it.
I have seen every single MCU movie in theaters.
Good job, bud.
I will say, if we're talking about, like, Phase 2 movies that feel standalone, like, Thor Dark World, like, I guess they find the stone, but you don't really need to know that, you know?
Yeah, they don't even give a shit about it in Infinity War.
Yeah.
The end of Thor 2 is really important.
Barely.
Because that's when Loki dies.
And then he doesn't die, and
but
then he's
he
actually
doesn't
Anthony
die.
Hopkins. Yeah, but
yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, like, Ragnarok had to start off with that as a result, you know? Like, so,
yeah.
Yes, like, a plot important thing happened. But I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, that's usually where it ends up whenever I talk about the Dark World.
Well, I mean, this is skipping ahead forever, but just, like, talking about, like, Thor, like, Ragnarok, I think, does a great job of being like, oh, Loki faked his death. Like, even if you didn't see that movie, they make it pretty clear what happened, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, again, totally skippable as a movie.
Yeah, Ragnarok did such a good job at kind of, because it made a lot of pointed references to Thor 1 and 2, but it also clearly jumped off of Age of Ultron with the Hulk through line, and it had a lot of, you know, funny self-referential things, like when Hulk started, when he picked up Thor and he started, like, bashing him around the floor with the exact same way he did with Loki in Avengers 1. Like, yeah, Civil War and Ragnarok
says, that's how it feels.
Yeah, like, Civil War and Ragnarok are, like, the most MCU movies.
Oh,
if that
yeah.
makes a lick of sense, but it just takes, they just take really well advantage of the world that they inhabit.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think since we talked about, like, you know, so, like, stage one of this universe is, like, very future looking, like, okay, what's going to happen next? And then, you know, the second part is very backwards looking. It's like the impact of Avengers 1. And then the third one is just like having fun with it.
Yeah. Phase 3 is just, hey, everyone's here. Like,
yep. We're having a party
Homecoming.
now.
Yeah. What do y'all think of Homecoming with Tony Stark's large presence in there?
Love it.
It's the best.
We're fans.
Expand. I'm sorry I missed your Spider-Man episodes, but I would love for you to kind of summarize your conclusions.
Spider-Man is always having the daddy issues, and Tony is the ultimate daddy, so
Tony is the ultimate daddy.
He really is, in so many ways.
He's the ultimate daddy issue, I would say.
Yeah, like, he covers all the spectrums
bases,
of it, you know, like, and we sort of talk about how in Iron Man 3, we sort of set Tony up for this, like, dealing with issues of parenthood, like, question with the, like, little boy who hangs out with him in the shed and, like, sort of befriends him. And, like, you know, feels very inspired by him, and, like, he in turn is inspired by the kid, and vice versa, and, like, that feels like a really solid through line in Homecoming. Like, it feels like a natural conclusion to that.
But then it gets really concluded in the next one that Tony and Spider-Man are in.
I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark.
Tragic.
See, like, I watched that scene over and over again to feel sad, and then I also watched the scene where Peter loses the suit to feel sad. Oh,
Why?
God, they're such good scenes.
Yeah,
why'd you do that?
No, but honestly, I can't.
Because they're great scenes.
Quoting, like, Infinity War, like how people quote Star Wars now. Like,
they do. They already do.
Like,
just look at any
I'm talking about, like,
channel.
Like, I'm talking about, like, a 12-year-old kid in 2038 quoting it.
Okay.
Like, that's cool.
Like the same way people say, like, I am your father, or may the force be with you.
Hell yeah.
So you're waiting for when they misquote the movie?
Yeah.
And they're like,
oh, yeah.
Tony Stark, I feel bad.
It's actually...
That's my secret, Cap. I'm
But
pretty pissed right now.
I feel like that is the true, like, it's part of culture when your kids are, like, misquoting it, you know? Like, that's not going anywhere.
Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar. Very quotable movie, right?
It's not a good movie.
Top grossing film.
That's my hot take.
There was the one part when the character of what's his face
Pocahontas
says to the other character
dances with wolves.
I see you. Remember that? I see you.
Oh, you mean like the line from BoJack Horseman that actually did that line 10 times better.
That's pretty funny. I was actually doubting that I actually got that right. I wasn't joking. I don't know if I got the quote right.
No, that is right. I totally forgot about everything in that movie.
But
you know what I didn't forget? We have a Hulk, you know? That's memorable.
Yeah, no, that's
and Marvel's quoting itself at this point because they said that in Infinity War.
When Loki said that. A little irony.
He's quoting himself on this one, folks.
Yeah. So are there any? This might be the question you were about to ask. Like, I'm looking at like the Phase 3 list right now, and I guess Black Panther and Doctor Strange are both pretty standalone.
Doctor Strange is pretty standalone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got tentpoles still, because like Ragnarok had some strange in it. Ragnarok got a little strange.
It feels it feels almost a little bit like alternating though, because like you have you can't go too long without including the larger cast of characters, because like Civil War had like everybody in it. Then you have Doctor Strange, which is a standalone. Then we go back to Guardians, which like continues. Oh, I don't know. Even Guardians 2 is kind of standalone though. Like they didn't do anything with.
Well, that's
Thanos,
because it's
really.
like 3 months in the future after Guardians.
Well, I mean, yeah, but there's a deliberate choice to not make it like all Infinity Stone heavy. You know?
Yeah. So I guess I don't know. That's 2 standalones. Then we have Spider-Man, but we've got a lot of Tony Stark in that. Thor, which has like the Hulk, and like we get a ton of references to the rest of the MCU. Black Panther, pretty standalone, and then we have Infinity War, which is like everyone again.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would like to comment a little bit about how the Doctor Strange tie-in in Thor Ragnarok is a really good example of showing the crossover, but not being dependent upon it, and not being dependent upon the crossover trying to get money or showing people to go watch Doctor Strange.
Oh, I totally disagree.
All right, well,
I mean, that's okay. We've basically done nothing but disagree so far, Anthony, and I'm sorry about that.
Stop. We can disagree.
But I thought that it was a total like tentpole, like you gotta go see Doctor Strange kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue with the thing on that, but like we could disagree about these points because these things are essentially meaningless in the grand scheme of the universe. Whereas there are other people out there who say, it's fine if we disagree on like I don't know human rights. So, you know, we're all good there.
Yeah, I agree on human rights.
Wait, Anthony, what was your point about Doctor Strange, though?
Some people have brought this up about how the Doctor Strange element in Thor Ragnarok was more of a showing a part of the wider universe, whereas, like, the thing that happened in Ant-Man was more of a forced connection. Like, I feel like the thing...
What makes it forced?
What made it forced was, like... there was no reason. It was like a surprise moment, whereas the thing that happened in Doctor Strange made sense with the characters involved.
Okay, so you're saying it was better integrated, and like I'm saying,
it was better integrated as a narrative standpoint.
That didn't matter as much to me because I just saw like the corporate. You know, I saw the hands moving behind the puppets.
I mean, so I didn't watch Doctor Strange, and like I sort of get why he shows up in Ragnarok because it's for all the people like me who didn't see Doctor Strange, to basically be like, here's this character, he's gonna be important later, know him, because like we know you're gonna go see Thor Ragnarok, like that's sort of what it felt like to me, and I was sort of like. Like, whereas with the Avengers, I was like, ooh, I like these characters, let me go watch all their movies now. With Doctor Strange, I wasn't suddenly like, gotta go see that movie. Like, I don't know. It didn't, like, work for me as well, I think.
Yeah, like, I can't see that sequence with Doctor Strange and Ragnarok acting as an advertisement to anyone, because it's maybe I'm just too optimistic and
like, look, it is a tentpole. I'm not going to argue it's not a tentpole, but it is, right. It's done narratively well. Like, these are all products. I'm not going to argue that they're not products.
No, I agree with you. I think it's better integrated than the Falcon scene. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, the way I try to jump into their shoes and think about like why they put these in, other than the cynical like, hey, it's capitalism reasons, but you know, when you get to the actual sequence in Ant-Man, like what's actually happening in that scene, it is
he's stealing like a part, right?
It's the heist team trying to get a thing for the heist that they're planning. And where is this thing? It's in a Stark Industries warehouse, which also happens to be the Avengers facility there. And when he gets there has to be an Avenger there. And Falcon doesn't have his own movie, you know. They could have chosen him because maybe Anthony Mackie was just free. The reason you would probably see in an interview is because, we thought that Falcon's abilities would be an interesting contrast to Ant-Man's abilities, which I don't know if that's really the case, but it's interesting how
they can't fly what you can't see.
Yeah, he could fly. Yeah, I guess so. But then you get to stuff like Civil War. So that was the first time in a long time you see William Hurt as Ross, as General Ross, or I guess in this case, Secretary of State Ross. And the writers are probably
it's not the same character. It might as well be a different character.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. They're like, okay, this could just be like a generic government character.
Official.
And we'll just cast someone like somewhat prestigious just to give that levity. But but there are two things. Number one, why don't we just use a character we already have that exists in the universe? Number two, hey, do we want to remind people that the Incredible Hulk exists as a movie? And I think that's a really interesting approach. Where it's like, you know, if like there's like, you know, Thor 1 didn't need S.H.I.E.L.D., but it needed a government agency to like get involved, so it's like, hey, why not just make it S.H.I.E.L.D.? So a lot of it, I try not to think it cynically as like, oh, that's just a plug for something else. It's, oh, we have this, why don't we just use it? And it
sure,
works
but
in
I
many
mean,
ways.
like, what would be really the difference if you just had like the retirement home was not destroyed, and then Thor doesn't need help finding his dad from somebody else, he just goes right to the retirement home and then he's there. Like, what would be the difference narratively? Yeah, I mean, maybe it wouldn't help, like, if Doctor Strange were not in Ragnarok, like, it probably wouldn't have made a difference in the movie Thor Ragnarok. It would have been shorter. Sure, whatever. It worked for me because to me that was like, oh, Doctor Strange isn't actually a part of this. Like, he last time you saw him, he was just kind of new to everything, and now you see him like just on a regular day, which I thought was really cool. So it's cool. I think it's cool when they're able to accomplish two things at once. They're able to accomplish, hey, how does Thor find his dad? And how do you like actually integrate Doctor Strange in the world? And I think, given the choice, they would do two things over just one thing. Logistics allowing. I think this plays into, there's like a discussion point that you had that was like, is it a valid criticism to complain that a movie is set up for another movie? But like, if it's doing two things, then, you know, that's not a valid complaint. If it feels like it's not doing anything besides setting up another movie, I think that is a valid criticism. No? Batman v Superman had a little sequence where Wonder Woman... I mean, that sequence was important to the plot. It established, you know, when she Luthor just watches doing. Like YouTube videos of the three other people. Right, but it establishes, like, you know, first of all, it establishes what Wonder Woman is, which is important to the third act, and it establishes what Luthor's goal is, which is to, destroy Superman and then control an army of other supers to, like be a god on Earth or whatever his silly goofball plan was. What a goose.
Maybe it didn't register to me like that at all when I first saw it. It felt
right.
So
like that's a question. Like, why do certain things register as more corporate and certain things as less corporate? That's an interesting topic.
Well, because in Batman v Superman, they interrupt the movie so we can watch Jason Momoa swim towards a camera and stab it with a trident. Because there is an urgent thing happening in the movie, and this has nothing to do with that.
It also had all the characters, all of the logos, all of the things that were just like, wait, what? Are you telling me that we know what the Flash's name before, like, the Flash became the Flash? Are you telling me you named Aquaman?
I think he's already the Flash in that video.
Lex Luthor named Aquaman. That's what that sequence is telling me.
Maybe he overheard a conversation where Aquaman named himself.
No,
I don't know.
That's not even what happened.
Does Aquaman ever call himself Aquaman in the movie?
Okay, that is a minute detail.
That is a minute detail. But yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, just like on the topic of like movies feeling like nothing but setup. I agree. Like, it's like with any television show, if like we're looking at this sort of as a larger, like you said at the beginning, sort of like a series of TV episodes, almost like there are sometimes setup episodes in television shows where it's like a quieter episode where like you sort of take a breath and just hang out with the characters. And like, you don't need that as much with movies because like just pacing wise, they're spread out a lot farther, obviously, than TV shows. But like, I don't know, like, I agree. To me, it's all in the execution, like you can have a setup movie that's amazing, where not a lot happens and it's very character driven and it's sort of like helping us get to know what's coming next. Whereas like you can have it poorly executed though too.
I just think there's a lot of like room for disagreement like here about like whether something is a good enough movie to set up a different movie or not. Like everyone in this group except me hates Amazing Spider-Man 2, right?
Yeah.
No,
it's terrible.
Wait,
yeah.
You like it?
Yeah, he does.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Wait, what?
So like everybody like criticizes that movie for being like set up for a universe that never comes to be. But like really all it does to set up that universe is like a couple of Easter eggs that they just walk past of like a Dr. Octopus arm in the background. Like that's all you get. And people are like, they just want to set up the Sinister Six. I don't know. It's subjective.
I mean, I feel like that scene feels that way.
Yeah, I felt like it was like I don't know. Also, like it tried to do the same thing that Spider-Man 3 did, and Spider-Man 3, no one likes. Well, not
those are David's two favorite Spider-Man movies,
which is weird. Which is
Spider-Man
so
3
weird,
is the best
which
one.
Which is so weird because it feels like
this here. We are not getting into this here.
No,
we are not. No, if you want to hear David's thoughts on it, you can go listen to
I don't want to go
Spider-Man
into the
episodes.
thoughts. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting because you like the most like super like bloated films of both of them, like in the sense that they have
I like all the other ones too, if that matters to anybody. I just think Spider-Man 3 is the most fun to watch.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I just think it's interesting when comparing that to like our discussions on like, whether or not Captain America appearing in Thor: The Dark World is like a bad thing.
Right.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. That one was fun.
Yeah, no, that was a fun little moment, because, like, they could do that at that point.
Because he's not there. He's not, like, really shoehorned in. It's just, like, it's a fun little Easter egg in-joke. I like Easter eggs. You like Easter eggs?
It's not really, you don't really find it, because it's just the scene.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Well, so, are we allowed to talk about Captain Marvel?
Yeah, totally. We did a little thing on that, so, do you want to do a spoiler warning?
Yeah, spoilers ahead.
Yeah.
So I'm like really conflicted on how I feel about the movie. I've seen it once and I'm going to see it again this week. But like as far as crossovers go, it's like this weird prequel crossover thing where it's like there's Nick Fury and Coulson and like Origins, but like we haven't really gotten an Origins movie like this since like I feel like since Captain America almost, or maybe I just haven't watched any of the other origin movies. Like I haven't watched Doctor Strange, I didn't watch Ant-Man, and like
no, but you're right. It hasn't been since First Avenger that we've done anything prior to Iron Man.
Current timeline.
Yeah, that went back in the chronology.
Yeah, and
I mean, unless you count Agent Carter, I guess, but
well, like the TV shows in and of themselves are sort of their own like little world.
I'm sad.
Yeah. But just like it's interesting to me how it felt really weird watching it. I don't know how you guys felt, but I felt really weird
watching Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
parts of it.
I mean, were you just weirded out by their CGI faces?
No.
I was weirded out by it because I was paying attention to it, and I was just like, oh man. But like I expected as much. I'm not like going into these movies for the massive CGI shit, which is weird.
There was one CGI shot of Clark Gregg that looked like horrifying, but other than that, it all looks pretty good to me. The only part where it like didn't seem right to me was anytime Samuel Jackson does like more physical movements, because you can tell that he's 70 years old in those scenes.
Yeah, they really try to keep his character pretty low
70.
key.
Yeah, I guess I kind of know what you mean. It feels so much in the universe, but it's weirdly detached, so you can't really reconcile both of those facts together, I guess.
Yeah.
Here's something that may or may not be relevant to your point. Ronan is in this movie.
He is.
Mm-hmm. And in the initial Guardians of the Galaxy, Ronan is a metaphor for terrorists, because he's like a radical, religious figure. Mm-hmm. And then in this movie, the metaphor for terrorists and / refugees is the Skrull. And now Ronan, rather than being a symbol of terrorism, is a symbol of
the
like
state.
Authoritarian imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's weird.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
I don't know. Maybe that's more of a subtextual one. That I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a subtextual weird continuity error.
I wouldn't consider it a
thematic
error.
continuity mistake.
You can argue. I mean, I don't really want to get into it that much, but you can argue that imperialist actions are terrorist.
Okay, so they're gonna build a space wall, you see, and a different and the Skrulls are gonna pay for it. So
right, well, I mean that's the point, right? Like, so if initially like Ronan was supposed to sort of look foreign and was sort of coded as this, I mean, I'm not going to say he's coded Muslim. I'm not familiar enough with that, but he was coded racially to be different from the white protagonist, and then now is being used as a symbol of American imperialism specifically, not the imperialism of any other country, but American imperialism,
which is also
that's an interesting
super interesting compared to the fact that Captain Marvel has so much pro military background, but I think that's just in marketing and maybe in plot. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes to show how many different interpretations you will see of the same character, and that's
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and there's a lot more. It's a lot more distinct in the comic books because you will have different art styles. And everything's like they try to keep everything consistent on film, but I feel like Joss Whedon and say Marcus McFeely of the Captain America movies, they write Steve Rogers very differently. I feel that Joss Whedon writes Tony Stark very differently from the Iron Man writers. It's and so I can kind of see like where that potential discrepancy can kind of come from, given the shared nature, which, I don't think people give enough credit for like how many different people are involved in this universe to kind of create those I love Steve Rogers in his own movies, but I hate him in Joss Whedon's movies, for example.
Yeah, I think that's like if it's done well, it's interesting because it's like, oh, different writers are having interesting different takes on these beloved characters. But if it's done super, super poorly, then you have kind of like this disconnect of like, this character is nothing like the takes that you see in other movies, and it just does not feel connected as you would think.
Which character do you feel suffers that the most, like throughout the films?
That depends on
takes.
Really who your like, for example, we did an Infinity War episode.
Gamora. It's Gamora.
So yeah, Sam Reardon was our guest on our Infinity War episode, and Infinity War was written by Marcus McFeely and directed by the Russos, who did Winter Soldier and Civil War. So it was the Captain America people making a movie that had everyone in it. And Sam just felt that like they just did not do the Guardians right, for example. Did you want to talk about Gamora, David?
Well, I was just saying, like, clearly she was the most, like, adaptationally, like, distorted. I don't know if it was necessarily, like, bad. It just, like, was not the same character.
Which is, it's just weird because James Gunn co-wrote those scenes.
Well, like, the dialogue, for sure, not the story beats.
Yeah, but he, like...
Save for maybe, like,
he's also the executive producer on it, so it seems kind of like...
Right, but yeah, but it's not his final say.
Yeah, I mean...
it's not his vision.
Look, I'm just saying, like, it's just interesting that, like, it's a drastic switch. It's not like a slight switch, it's a drastic switch.
Well, I just remember, like, everybody was commenting at the end of... at the end of Guardians 2, that, like, even then, there's, like, a nice platonic handhold at the end between, Quill and Gamora. But, like, they don't kiss, there's no, like, romance. The first kiss, canonically, in the entire series is in Infinity War, and it's, like, their farewell death kiss. It's kind of, like, an odd thing to have in a movie.
I think the argument that one can make for that is that it's like a few years after the handhold in Volume 2.
Yeah, we don't know what's been going on.
Yeah, they could
That's
have
4 years of we don't know.
They could have gone on vacation multiple times together and.
Listen, watch out for Tony's fanfic of
Peter
Quill and Gamora's honeymoon.
Garfield and
Garfield and
Guardians.
Season 4.
Yeah.
Check out edbydesign.com. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of where I start to argue against the idea of it's just one giant franchise rather than like a franchise of franchises, because I feel the different voices in it kind of make it a little more of a mosaic. Because, you can argue about the Star Wars sequel trilogy, but, like, the ones before the Star Wars movies, they, like, no matter who was directing or writing it, it was very, very, like, George Lucas's vision, like, kind of a,
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Kevin Feige is, like, he's, like, the mastermind behind the MCU, but I think he gives a lot of space for his filmmakers, depending on what the property is. Like, I feel like Guardians would have more space, than I didn't mean to do that until after
that is why I'm excited for like the Eternals, because I feel like it's going to be kind of going back to that like
for more
who the fuck are
stuff.
these people type of thing that people had with Guardians of the Galaxy, and like it doesn't.
Shang-Chi, who's that?
Yeah, that too.
I don't know who that is. I want to check him out.
The guy who directed
who's excited for that Black Widow movie?
The guy that directed that other Brie Larson movie.
Short Term 12?
He's directing Shang-Chi.
I just guessed.
No, it was Short Term 12. The guy who directed that. He's directing Shang-Chi.
Yeah, cool.
He's Hawaiian.
So
I think like a really interesting question that you have on here, Chris, is does it detract team up movies when you like or dislike any characters or franchises more than the others? Do you guys want to discuss that? Like, who was your least favorite character, like, alone, that ended up in Infinity War?
I was going to go earlier because Age of Ultron was before Ragnarok, so I did not give a shit about Thor during that movie.
Yeah, same. Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah, but he was just poorly written in that movie alone. Like, I think if Thor had, like, a decent arc... Because you liked Thor in Avengers 1, right?
I liked the shot
not.
where
Okay.
he landed on the Quinjet. That was cool.
Well, I just thought, like, in Avengers 1, he's got, like, a really solid arc because all of his story is through Loki, who is the main villain of the story. So his arc is very well tied into the main plot, whereas
for sure.
in Ultron, it's, like, laughably separate from the rest
go
of the
in this hot tub! Yeah, Infinity War. I mean, you know, I have like the case of Benedict Cumberbatch hatred, but
right. So like his character receives a good share of the spotlight in Infinity War. Did that drag it down for you?
Surprisingly, no, because I felt that
I really enjoyed him.
This movie utilized him really well. Like, I know some people who did not even watch Doctor Strange are like, oh, that was pretty cool.
I like the movie Doctor Strange, and I thought that I am ambivalent towards Benedict Cumberbatch, but I like Doctor Strange, the person, the character. I mean, yeah.
Well, so I'll say this, like, in the same way that I said earlier, like, seeing Doctor Strange show up in Thor Ragnarok, I was sort of like, ugh, whatever, I don't care about this person. But, like, after Infinity War, I'm like, all right, maybe I should watch Doctor Strange. Like, I enjoyed him in this.
So is there something to, like, if you put two characters up against each other who have a lot of contrast, it helps define each character more. So, which like, Doctor Strange basically seems like a ripoff of Tony Stark, but when you put the two of them up against each other, they start to feel... It
highlights their differences.
Yeah, it highlights their differences, makes them both better defined, and then it makes you more interested in seeing more of those characters.
Yeah.
The filmmakers of Infinity War, they called this, and they're not because of Doctor Strange, but because of the differences between characters, they use the term strange alchemy a lot when talking about how they put characters together. And they basically paired characters because they thought, like, the contrasts would be the most interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so same thing with, like, Tony and Peter Quill, Star-Lord.
Totally.
Like, they're also both the snarky, infantile male lead, but you really get to see just how much more of a child Peter is.
Yeah, especially like when you see Ragnarok, Thor, and Rocket bounce off of each other, like that was a really interesting pairing. I felt. I guess going with my question about, I have a little point here. It's like, are the Avengers films capable of having their own personality and tone, or is it all just kind of a generic blender? I feel I want to ask. I want to kind of funnel that into a different question. Is Infinity War actually an Avengers movie? Because there is no Avengers, like, team or unit. Like, what does the title Avengers even mean in this movie?
Well, it's a concept. It's an idea.
Ooh.
Of a group of people.
Okay,
the Protectors.
There's an idea that a group of people can come together.
Right, you have to do the whole thing.
Blah, 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 blah. The rest of this is...
The whole speech.
The Avenging League of Super People who avenge stuff, and two girls.
Sadly accurate.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question again? I wanted to answer it.
I think the first question was, can the Avengers films have their own personality and tone? The second question was, is Infinity War actually an Avengers movie? Or is it just a Marvel movie?
My suspicion is that... So, like, I mean, is Infinity War just sort of a setup for Infinity War Endgame? Because I feel like, you know...
Maybe.
Like...
I would argue it isn't, but a lot of people do think that.
I mean, like, here, I enjoyed Infinity War immensely. It's got some problems, but on the whole, I enjoyed that experience. I also think it is a really enjoyable setup movie for Endgame, which I think will be an Avengers movie.
Here's the interesting argument against that. The protagonist of Infinity War is Thanos. And at the end of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos is happy, content, and complete. If we didn't give a shit about anybody else, but we only cared, we cared about Thanos, like Thanos did a good thing, and that's how it ended, that would be pretty great for Thanos.
It's an arc.
That would be all wrap it up. Good to go.
Totally. Thanos has a like Joseph Campbell journey almost through this.
Yeah, but I mean, so do most villains. I don't think that there's anything really astounding about the amount of screen time that Thanos gets as opposed to like
I don't
villains
think it's
in other movies.
I don't think it's astounding. I think it's just normal. Like he's the only consistent thing.
He's the protagonist in a movie.
No, he's not the protagonist,
yes,
Anthony. He's the antagonist. Like when you see the Joker's the first character we see in The Dark Knight, but who he's
wins,
there throughout the movie. End of the Dark Knight?
Batman? Who is the character that fulfills the goal that they accomplished at the beginning, that they wanted, that they tried?
Well, you can argue the Joker won the Dark Knight because he basically he gets Harvey Dent fucking killed.
Anthony, I think that's a little reductive because you could say like Voldemort is the like protagonist of the fourth Harry Potter movie, which would not be true.
Okay,
but he accomplishes his goal.
But I think the thing is that other like people have talked about how Thanos is. It's not the Avengers and the heroes that are the focus. It's Thanos that is the main focus of us.
But it is though.
So okay, here's my compromise opinion. I'm going to be the centrist here, and so whenever I would call Thanos a protagonist, but I would put that in quotation marks. I feel like he is not the hero. But he is the focus of the movie. He is the one that is easiest to track, in my opinion. He's the only one who is in all. I
don't know if I agree with that.
He's in all the through lines. He's in all of the different storylines of the movie. He's the only character who's in all of them.
He's almost the MacGuffin.
But we don't even necessarily know Thanos's motivation at the beginning. Like we learn it as sort of a mystery reveal, which is very similar to most villain stories. Whereas the other characters, we know their motivations going in, and that's why we relate to them, and that's why we want them to succeed.
I don't know.
I really want Thor to succeed because he wants revenge for his dead brother.
Okay, but we don't have to want a hero to succeed. We don't have to want the protagonist to succeed for them to still be the protagonist. Anti-heroes are protagonists all the time.
And to argue that
but
also...
we still want them to succeed in their goals.
To add to that comment, we don't need to know the goal of the protagonist at the beginning of the movie either. There's a lot of movies that tackle that, where the goal is explained over the course of the film, and then they achieve that at the end. It's not like a clear cut, their goal is this. Because at the beginning, you're just like, Thanos' goal is to collect all the stones. But why does he want to collect all the stones?
I like Thor, and he wants to get revenge, and he gets an axe hammer.
Everyone has an arc in this movie. It's just that I think Thor. It's very good. Thanos has the largest overarching one. I feel like everything else. I feel like everyone else's arc is kind of umbrellaed under his.
Yeah, well, so I feel like, sort of to answer your question then, this is maybe a Thanos film rather than an Avengers film,
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's stupid, but
Thanos has his own problems that we have discussed and dissected pretty rigorously.
I mean, yeah.
But, that's not...
For sure.
Yeah, I don't want to, because that is just... Yeah, he sucks, we get that. But the idea is that, he is the focus of this movie, and the Avengers are reacting to Thanos. Thanos is not reacting to the Avengers.
But villains always drive them. Whatever. We're moving on. The point being, as far as this movie being an Avengers movie, being a crossover movie of different characters, or being a bunch of different movies just kind of smushed together, you can kind of view this like Arrested Development Season 4. It's a Rashomon of stories that all culminate in one big climactic scene.
Okay,
Robert Altman is kind of the main inspiration for the Russo brothers. A jumpy ensemble film that's 3 hours long.
I have not seen Nashville, but I have seen Arrested Development, and the Russo brothers did direct some episodes of that. But I know the Russo brothers, they've done stuff like this as well. They do Arrested Development type stories, which are all about a bunch of different characters off accomplishing their own goals that all come together in the end for one crazy, not so
finale.
Yeah. Yeah, and then usually Arrested Development episodes end like in a really stupid way. But,
and the status
this
quo
one
is
ended with
returned.
everyone dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, Arrested
Not so
Development
much
crossed
fun.
over with the Avengers.
No, just Fantastic.
In multiple
You're
spots.
right. That's true. We did mention that.
How would you define an Avengers movie? Like, are the Avengers line of movies, are they their own series, or are they just kind of like a special limited event?
Maybe this is stupid to say, but I feel like we've had so few of them, question mark? Like, you know, like we have like the first Avengers film, then we have Age of Ultron, and then we have Infinity War. So like that's 3 films out of like how many, you know?
20 something at this point. Yeah.
And like I would like on instinct, I want to say Captain America Civil War is an Avengers film because everyone's in it, but like technically it's not, but it feels that way. So like, but even so, that's still only like 4 movies out of 20 plus films. And 2 of them were directed by the same guy, and like the others were like, I guess also both directed by the Russos. But like,
the reason why I would never call Civil War an Avengers movie just because it has the Avengers in it is because I feel that, kind of going back to my point about, it has the through lines of Steve, Bucky, and Peggy. It also has it has a more muted aesthetic, just visually. Whereas I feel like Infinity War, because it has so much cosmic stuff, it has like a larger color palette.
Well, there's a big visual distinction, but I think you're also hitting on the main thing, which is just like Avengers or Captain America Civil War has a singular protagonist, and all the rest of the Avengers that appear in the movie, they're either sidekicks to him or they're antagonists.
But I mean, like Age of Ultron, you could almost paint Tony as like the singular protagonist a little bit, you know?
I don't know if I'd characterize it that way though, because I mean, there's so much Banner in there.
I don't know. To me, Age of Ultron feels like Tony's story, but then like we also have crap with other people involved in the same way that in like Captain America Civil War, like that's Cap's story, but like we also have a lot of shit going on with Tony and like other people and Bucky and Wakanda and like all of that, you know? Like it feels similar.
You're right.
Argument for a different day. But,
sure.
I feel that when you look at Avengers 1, it looks very generic.
Yeah.
It looks very...
Well, it does now because everyone's borrowed that aesthetic, but like at the time it was very visually striking.
You said you haven't seen Avengers 1 since it came out?
Yeah, I don't think I have.
I don't think it would hold up well if you were to watch it today.
You have to go into it kind of being like, oh, this is going to be super campy.
Right. Well, I won't even say it's campy. It's just the even just like the image quality looks very television-ish. It's like when you look at how more specifically, I would say the Phase 3 movies use color a lot better. But I kind of get why Avengers 1 did that. It's because Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor all had different color palettes in this movies. So when Joss Whedon put them all together, it's like, okay, just make it all normal.
Right.
that way they're not clashing.
Too comic booky already.
Yeah. And so going with that, I feel like Infinity War did a more comprehensive job at combining things together because like there were some Earthbound scenes that looked like something from Civil War, for example, but then you had like the space scenes, you had Thor and Guardians focus scenes, and then you had, the Russos would consult the production designers and the costume designers and
they were filming Black Panther while Infinity War was being filmed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they just hit up their buds next door. It's like, hey, can you tell us how to do Wakanda?
Well, in terms of color, like you were saying, like maybe this plays into your point that like Thanos is the most important part of Infinity War, which is the whole movie just kind of reminds me of like the Eric Andre bit. What if it was purple?
What if this were Battlefield Earth starring John Travolta?
What if it was purple?
What if it was purple?
Yeah. I also love the anecdote of just, hey, like, what are some things that you guys would say, like, your characters? So it like, to me, that approach of directing of and the Russos have the advantage of this over Whedon, because by the time the Russos are making Infinity War, there is more MCU to work off of. But he basically said to the Black Panther performers and the Guardians performers, like, hey, you guys just do you. You know your characters better than we do. So I don't know.
Right.
Is Infinity War the most ambitious crossover?
And I think that's cool. I like that.
It's pretty damn ambitious.
Well, semblance of the word, yeah.
I mean, one thing we didn't talk about at all, which I don't think we're going to really have a lot of time to get into, is the TV shows and how, like, all of the non-movie properties cross over into this shared universe. And it's very minimally, but in the podcast that we did for David and I for Talking Tropes, Chris, you brought up the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. tied in with Winter Soldier when that was coming out. And, like, I just remember being as excited about that as I was about the first Avengers film. Because it felt totally new, and it really just felt like this exciting new opportunity for storytelling. And, like, maybe it's not really feasible, financially, but I wish it was, because, like, it's such an interesting tactic that, I don't know, like, the storytelling nerd in me just, like, comes out whenever it's like, and then you go over here and find more story.
Transmedia storytelling!
Yeah, like...
Now open this app on your phone to see what happens next.
Oh, God, no.
You have to pay 99 cents.
No. Too far.
Buy the scratch and sniff.
Like, it's so hard to get audiences to cross platforms like that. Like, I work in publishing and, like, grew up, like, reading a shit ton of books, and I have never done an interactive, like, book media, like, thing. Like, they're just two separate experiences for me. Like, I've never found one that worked.
Wasn't it like a J.J. Abrams thing that he did recently where it was like a book app?
No, it wasn't an app. It was just there was crap stuffed into the book, which I kind of of liked that.
Yeah,
I
I actually have that book. I bought it when I was younger. I don't know if it's good or not because I haven't opened it yet.
It was compelling in the way that all J.J. Abrams things are compelling, but then I never finished it.
Mystery box.
So exactly, it was literally a mystery box.
Literally a mystery box.
Yeah. But like it's just interesting to me that like there are very few things that I feel like cross medium really well, and I think when it's at its best, the MCU does that, and like at its worst, it's the fucking Defenders, you know.
Yeah, I guess, you know, when you really think about it, there was a time where everyone was really, really excited about Marvel Cinematic Universe because, yeah, you're right, it was doing things that literally had never been done before. No one had ever done a crossover of, 4 different movies? Or was it 5?
4. Yeah, for the first Avengers.
Hulk,
4 characters,
Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. So 4 movies?
5 movies, 4 characters.
5 movies, 4 characters. Yeah, so it was like 4 different like franchises literally coming into one film, and then they did one medium transitioning and affecting a different medium. But then like nobody cared when they did a bunch of TV shows crossing over with each other.
Because they did a bad job at it. But,
yeah.
Yeah. I actually tried to rewatch some Defenders. Like you guys know I've been rewatching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. lately, and just to humor the Defenders a little bit, I just kind of jumped in the middle of that just to see how it still holds up. And there are so many little things that I think like could have been cool about it. Like, I think a lot of the direction works. I think I like what they did with the color palettes and a lot of the but like they're all small things. At its core, the writing was just not there, and it wasn't even a disaster. It was just kind of underwhelming to me. Just kind of
it was really boring, which is like,
exactly.
in my opinion, the worst thing that a piece of media can be is like really boring.
Yeah. So I guess you made me think of a final question to ask here.
Great.
So we did Avengers. At the time I thought that was like the biggest thing you can ever do. 6 years later, they do something even bigger. No one really knows what's going to happen. Far From Home is the last officially announced, like on the schedule film for Marvel Studios. We know like other stuff that's coming up after that, but we haven't had the Apple press conference, as we call it, to line it all up. But what, like, have they played their one or I guess two cards? Is that all is that the height of what they can do? Is there anything else that Marvel Studios can do, or Marvel television maybe?
Yes.
Is there anything else they can do to make you still excited that will make the novelty of the MCU still feel fresh? I don't know what that is.
Yes,
so I want to know what you think, David.
It's Elseworld comics. We haven't done Elseworld movies yet.
Can you elaborate what that means?
Oh, what Elseworld is.
Elseworld comics are, a type of comic book where you explore a hypothetical universe using the same characters that you're familiar with, but with some kind of twist. Yeah. Classic example is Red Sun. A what if Superman was, I think, is one of them. A Ruski.
16 something.
Yeah, that's another one.
1692 is like basically the Marvel universe. I forget. I think it's like
It's one of the many Marvel Universe Elseworlds that people like.
Yeah, they're called What If comics. They're doing. They're actually going to be
right. They're What If comics, and I think I think the next step, and maybe this is not where they're going at all, but if it were me running the Marvel Universe, once we've gotten to a point where continuity is at peak continuity, and no one cares anymore about remembering all this history of 10 years of films. That's when you start playing with the notion of, we don't need to use continuity, but people recognize these characters. They know what these characters are like.
Well, they are actually doing What If comics, David.
They are doing an animated series instead of a live action. That way it'll be easier to get the actors, I guess.
That's DC, right?
No, Marvel. Marvel is doing a
Disney
What If
Plus
series, apparently. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Elseworld.
There you go!
That's great. I'm excited for that.
Is the DC version of What If comics.
Do you think they would make...
Well,
I can't imagine Marvel making a non-canon live-action movie, but, they can break their own rules. Like, there's no real precedent for what they're doing right now, so I could very well be wrong. I just can't imagine, like...
I would think, it would be an interesting thing to do with that, especially if you introduce, the idea of a multiverse into the...
Oh, don't do it! Don't
Marvel canon, where something can be kind of canon, but not really
canon.
I don't want it either.
On screen.
As someone who's literally watched these movies forever, no.
Okay, Marvel Zombies. Are they going to make that movie?
Disney Plus, if they do a Disney Plus animated Marvel Zombies, sure. Why not?
What, you don't want to see zombie Chris Hemsworth eat zombie Natalie Portman? You don't think they can get the actors for that?
Jeez.
Nope.
So again, much easier to draw than to get AAA actors for.
Poor Natalie Portman.
I love that anecdote of the post-credits scene of Thor: The Dark World, where Thor returns to Earth and he kisses Natalie Portman, but Natalie Portman was not available, so instead they got, from the back, Elsa Pataki, who is also Chris Hemsworth's wife, to play the role. During this performance of Thor: The Dark World, the role of Jane Foster will be played by Chris Hemsworth's wife. Anywho, did anyone else have anything to say on that question of, what else can they do? I think that was just David who answered that. Does anyone have any ideas? Not that they're going to totally use them, because I don't think Kevin Feige listens to this podcast.
Well, I mentioned the Eternals, and I think that will be pretty cool.
What are the Eternals?
It's a movie coming up. It's already been announced.
Whoops.
No, it's okay.
I'm a fake fan!
No, you don't. No. It's fine. You guys, not a lot of people know.
I don't really know anything about them either.
It's basically a bunch of space. It's a bunch of space people. They're a bunch of space dudes.
It's a bunch of space dudes. Well, that's the new thing they're gonna do to excite everyone now that the novelty of the crossover wears off.
Yeah, I don't know. They did it with Guardians.
Well, for one thing, we know like for sure they're gonna do is they're gonna bring in all of the Fox characters
At some point. Yeah,
but like.
Yeah.
Does anyone is that really a novelty anymore? Like we're so familiar with those characters.
Do you think they're gonna do a Star Wars Marvel crossover?
Well, Patton Oswalt has something cooking up, I think. Well, I mean, like, are there no more gimmicks left to do? I mean, you can bring in characters, but like, what if would be a gimmick? But
yeah,
I can't think of any. I don't know. There's no precedent for this.
I think whatever they do, they're gonna have to, I think, take a step back after whatever happens in Infinity War Endgame. Just because I think at this point we're all ready for it, but I think we're starting to hit that fatigue point again that people were starting to hit around the post Avengers era with like Thor Dark World and like Winter Soldier and just like all of these films that were like really serious and really kind of like self-important in kind of weird ways, like whether or not you agree that they are as important as they feel they are, like they take themselves very, very seriously, whereas like Ragnarok doesn't, like I think there's gonna have to be some kind of tone shift, and I think after seeing them all together, it's gonna feel really nice to have people sort of break off into their own stories again.
Right, yeah. So obviously the gimmick they would use next would not be like Avengers 5 would just be
even more people. Like I think it would be super interesting to see like another sort of small scale Avengers movie, I guess, where it's like maybe there's new Avengers, like we've got Spider-Man and Black Panther, and like the others have sort of either stepped back or retired. I don't know what all the plans are. But
yeah, maybe we're overthinking this. Maybe literally every movie for the next 40 years is going to be different permutations of, well, we haven't tried this character with this character yet. We haven't tried that character with that character. And, like, just every combination is a new movie.
Just more buddy cops, like Thor and Hulk.
Sure. I feel like if like Avengers 5 where if Avengers 5 were just a standard movie that had Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and whoever else, the people would watch it because they like those characters, not because it's a crossover movie.
For sure.
Which is the opposite of Avengers 1, where it's like, maybe they don't care about the characters, they just like that it's a crossover movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, would people still be excited for that? And
I would.
Maybe they would in a different way.
I would.
But
that's because I'm weird.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not
on that note,
it's not because I'm weird. It's just because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good thing we figured out the entire MCU for the next 20 years just now. Yeah. I guess we'll.
If you guys want more of my bad opinions on Spider-Man and Bug's Life, apparently.
Also, Doctor Who.
Go check out. Also, Doctor Who. We have really bad opinions about Doctor Who. Come check out our podcast, Talking Tropes. Every week we discuss either the tropes of a particular piece of media or a particular page on tvtropes.com, and we just dissect it, talk about the history, the present, what we like and we dislike, and the future of all the tropes.
I want to see a Bug episode from y'all now.
Bugs.
It can happen. We just did a Penguin episode.
We just did every Penguin movie.
Yeah. Now the
Penguins
doors
of
wide
Madagascar.
open.
Did you guys hear about that new Rambo movie?
What?
Rambo Last Blood, I think is what it's called.
Rambo Last Blood.
It's like
it's about
Mexico.
Rambo
I think.
goes to Mexico. Yep.
And then they make Last Blood Part 2.
The Last Blood. No, like
The Last Drop.
Rambo: The Last Samurai.
But so you guys are on Talking Tropes is on Twitter, correct?
It is. If you want to talk to us on Twitter, talk to us at Talking Tropes.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find us on Patreon at Talking Tropes. And yeah, we're anywhere podcasts are found.
Yeah, pretty much. On the AM radio. No. Similarly, AP Marvel is on Twitter at AP Marvel. We also have a Facebook page. We have a God, I don't know why. I just wrote social media plugs down, and I don't know why I'm struggling to think of all the social media platforms we're on. But
we have so many social media platforms.
Yeah, Tumblr.
So cool. Yeah, Tumblr. Woo, Tumblr. We have a MySpace. We have a Google Plus.
Friendster.
We have a Pinterest.
I got an email today saying, "Hey, do you want to save all your Google Plus information before we close down?" And I'm like, "Nah." But we are also
I didn't even know.
We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. If you want to listen to podcasts on YouTube, and I know people do, so I'm not making fun of them. And Overcasts, Pocket Casts, every cast you can think of. Leave a review. We love reviews, even bad ones. But
yeah, tell us what you like.
Bad,
if you hate the words that come out of my mouth, tell me.
Yeah, a lot of reviews have mentioned Anthony by name. I won't say if it was good or bad, but
wait, really?
Oh, I mean, like we'll talk later.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Anthony, I love your voice and your opinions, and I'm glad we disagree on some things, but we can agree on other things. I just want to come together.
One
at
guy,
the end.
he just wrote the name Anthony 50 times with no other context, and it's a great review.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you know what?
On Patreon.
Thanks to you.
I also just made that up. Anyway, we're also on Patreon, patreon.com/APMarvel. We're on Medium, medium.com/AP-Marvel. And join our Discord. Tell us what you think about what you just heard today. We love the Discord discourse.
Sometimes.
We have a good community. There has never been a time in our Discord where I'm like, nah, I don't want you here. Everyone who has contributed to these conversations are very good people and with very thoughtful analysis and takes and jokes. Thanks to Charles Villanueva for the graphical design for us, Steve Maltor for the track Jazz Ventures, and thank you to all our patrons. I also forgot, Anthony, where are you on Twitter?
I'm at the Pizza Taco on Twitter. I'm doing a lot of things right now, and one of those things that I'm doing right now is I'm playing Pokemon, and this fucking thing is pissing me off, and it shouldn't be pissing me off.
Wait, you're playing like right now as you're recording?
On my 3DS, yeah.
Wow, pay attention to.
I have been paying attention this whole time.
I am at Compenderizer on Twitter. We'll be back next week. I'll talk to you later about this, Tony, but I want to do another James Gunn episode.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, because I got some thoughts. Anyway.
Ooh, bad thoughts, good thoughts, medium thoughts, ambivalent thoughts, crazy
You'll
thoughts.
have to find out.
Tune in to find out.
Find out. Whoa.
Don't jump the James Gunn.
Beep, 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 beep.
The music world just says.
Bye.
Okay, now it's working. Yeah, well, do you know how I fixed it? I slammed my hands on the keyboard. Honest to God, that is literally what I did. I'm sorry, everyone. This is a mess. Everything sucks. I hate this. Yep, but I was slamming my hands on the keyboard. Nope. Yep. It's not an undo. It is a feature. It is a thing. It is. Yeah, I'm recording right now. Yeah, it's fine. Chris will figure it out. Sorry.
Yes,
Chris.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's the line I always love hearing from all you
I'm
guys.
so
Chris
sorry.
will figure it out.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Well, I see. The thing is, I can't undo it because it was just like a thing. It's the Fonzie feature. Not the Fonz feature where you slam your hand on something and it fixes it.
The Fonzie the bear.
Shut up. This is
Fozzie Bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
I don't know what's going on with me. Thanks. Wow, that's nice. That's pretty cool.
I was also looking up water pics. So
well, in the interim,
I saw this great instruction. I took 1.5 minutes. I watched this instructional video on how to use a water pick, and I'm like, wait a minute, how much for these again? Oh man.
I'm recording now.
I just ordered a 1/4 pounder with cheese, and I'm gonna order a 10-piece nugget.
I just stole your 1/4 pounder with cheese.
And I'm gonna order a 10-piece nugget.
I stole your 10-piece nugget.
You don't touch my nugget.
It's disgusting. Anyway. Alright, we're all good now?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
What's disgusting? Is it the grease?
I don't know. I'm
meat?
just kind of like swearing off fast food for the time being. I'm being
but it's the
very
best.
self-conscious about my fitness and body and whatnot.
Chris,
and
Hey,
Be like
you know
me.
what? I
Don't
just
give a
got back
shit.
from living in a cave. I want 2 things. I want an American cheeseburger, and what was
what
the,
kind
what
of
was the
Tony
line
Stark
from Iron
voice
Man?
is that?
I'm not doing a Tony Stark voice. This is my
I want
voice.
a hamburger. Just
Gotta
give me,
talk
give me
like
a
this,
hamburger,
like
and they got
from
him a
the
Burger
city.
King hamburger.
This is my voice.
I really thought you were doing like a voice there because that's what it sounded like.
Well, if I did it
Inflection.
like a Robert Downey Jr. voice, it would be like, "Grumble, grumble, I'm Tony Stark."
Fucking perfect. Okay, want me to just start off this thing?
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Fucking do it.
Okay.
I hope everything works.
Take out the phone and just hit voice notes.
I have
just in
that right
case.
now. It's been going on for 3 minutes.
Okay, alright.